Current issues in Indian economy series. Today is the third lecture and the today's issue is generalized system of preferences. Now to understand this GSP in a better way, we will have to first understand certain principles of WTO. This GSP falls under World Trade Organization's trade rules. Now under WTO there is an important principle which says that if one country, for example China, if China has 10% import duty on certain products coming from Germany or Russia, then China should offer the same 10% import duty on products coming from all the countries. This is called most favored nation principle. This most favored nation principle basically says that countries should not discriminate against trade. So whatever benefits they are offering against one country, it should be available to all the countries, which is the MFN principle. Now, for this MFN principle of WTO trade, there are certain exceptions also granted by WTO. And one of the important exception is generalized system of preferences. Now, in generalized system of preferences, WTO says that any developed country can offer certain extra benefits, some differential treatment to developing economies. That means it's a violation of MFN principle, but as such, since it has been granted as an exception for the developing economies. So everywhere WTO is saying that developed countries can offer certain extra benefits under GSP to developing economies. But it is not applicable only to developing economies, it is applicable to developing countries and least developed countries also. So under GSP, developed countries of the WTO members can offer extra benefits, extra market access to the products coming from developing economies and least developed countries also, and it is applicable for products or merchandise, not for services as such, because everywhere it is saying that products only. Now, coming to the US GSP program, US had included India under its GSP beneficiaries countries. US has around 120 beneficiary countries in which India is one. Now, recently US and India trade was, last year US and India trade was around $48 billion. Out of this trade, so this was the exports which India was doing to US in 2017-18. Out of this export, around $5.6 billion was under GSP. And out of this $5.6 billion, these products were mainly animal husbandry, meat, fish and handicrafts. So the products covered under GSP are these products for India: handicrafts, animal husbandry related products, meat and fish. And the eligibility criteria for GSP is, so any member country can have any kind of criteria. Now when US was offering GSP benefits to developing and least developed countries, US has certain criteria to grant this GSP benefit. So there are two categories of criteria. One is mandatory and the other is discretionary. One of the mandatory criteria under GSP by US is that country should not be a communist country, and the other mandatory criteria, for example, is the country should take sufficient steps to remove child labor. This is the mandatory criteria. The discretionary criteria is the level of development, what is the level of development of that country and how much market access that country is giving to the US products. So this is the eligibility criteria under GSP. Now recently on 5th June 2019, US terminated the GSP benefit to India Why US terminated this? Because US trade body did a review of Indian trade and it found that Indian officials, Indian law is not permitting enough market access to the US products on certain categories of products. For example, medical devices, certain products of information and communication technologies. So, for these products, US claimed that India was not giving sufficient market access. Plus, there was one other concern also that India is regulating the prices of its medical devices. So, on this ground, US terminated the GSP beneficiary status for India and US has also terminated the beneficiary status of Turkey. Now, how it is going to impact India? As we discussed, total exports of India to US is $48 billion. Out of this, $5.6 billion was covered under GSP. So, this trade is going to be impacted. Now, because of the GSP benefit which US had offered to India, US companies was also benefiting because US companies were getting cheaper products from India. They were not paying import duties as it was freely entering into the US market. So, the US companies are also going to lose. There will also be impact on inflation because the product prices of those goods will rise in US and it will lead to the higher prices for the consumers. And it will impact Indian companies also, those who are exporting. Now, their products will not be that competitive and any other country can capture the market for those products. So, it is going to be a lose-lose situation for both the countries, for US also and for India also. Now, you might be thinking that while unilaterally terminating the GSP status, is it a violation of WTO rules, regulations or not? So, to answer that question, in one of the past rulings of WTO, the appellate body under WTO in certain GSP case, it had ruled that any member country can offer different benefits to different countries under GSP, but only if that differential treatment is benefiting a particular country from trade perspective or that country is going to have certain market access for the products. Now, when US cancelled the US terminated the GSP status for India, none of the cases it was not done on an objective manner and it doesn't apply to those cases. So, it seems that it was a sanction against India and Turkey. So, it is a violation of the WTO principles. Now, whether India will move or not, that depends on India, whether India is planning to move to US or not, but on the face of it, it seems that it is a violation of the WTO principles because it has unilaterally terminated the GSP status. Now, US has also said that in future, if India considers to give market access to the US products, then US can again bring India under the GSP beneficiaries countries. So, this is all about GSP. Whatever I said, the notes have been uploaded on our YouTube also. You can download the notes for the GSP also and wait for the next lecture. Thanks.